The crystal chandeliers of the Manhattan Café caught the afternoon light like frozen tears, casting rainbow fragments across marble floors that had been polished to mirror perfection. Victoria Chen swept through the entrance at exactly 2:47 p.m., 3 minutes before the agreed time, because arriving first meant control, and control meant never being caught off guard again. Her Louboutin heels clicked against the floor with the precise rhythm of a woman who calculated every step, every breath, every word before it left her lips. At 35, she commanded boardrooms with the same ruthless efficiency she brought to everything else in her life. Her outfit today had been chosen with surgical precision: a Tom Ford suit that whispered power, a Hermes bag that screamed success, and a smile that could freeze hell itself. She spotted him immediately. Marcus Rivera sat at a corner table, his back to the wall, eyes tracking every movement in the room with an alertness that seemed oddly out of place in this temple of overpriced coffee and carefully curated ambiance. He wore a simple blue work shirt, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms marked with the kind of muscle that came from actual labor, not gym memberships. There was a faint oil stain on his collar that he'd tried to scrub out but hadn't quite managed. Victoria's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Her friend Sarah had set this up, claiming it was a networking opportunity, someone interested in her venture capital firm's automotive division. But one look at this man, with his calloused hands wrapped around a plain black coffee, told her everything she needed to know. This was another misguided attempt at matchmaking, another Sarah special, where she tried to prove that opposites attract and love finds a way. As she approached, Marcus stood, extending his hand in greeting. "Ms. Chen, I'm Marcus Rivera. Thank you for meeting me." Victoria looked at his outstretched hand for exactly 2 seconds, long enough for discomfort to settle between them like fog, then swept past it entirely, settling into her chair as if his gesture had been invisible. "So," she said, her voice carrying that particular tone she'd perfected in board meetings, the one that could make grown CEOs sweat. "You're Marcus." Her gaze traveled over him with the same clinical assessment she used for quarterly reports. The work boots with actual wear patterns, not distressed designer fashion. The watch that told time and nothing else. The slight grease under his fingernails that spoke of honest work and modest means. "Just a mechanic?" The words hung in the air between them, sharp as surgical steel, designed to cut. Marcus didn't flinch. His dark eyes held hers with a steadiness that made something in her chest tighten unexpectedly. "Just a mechanic," he agreed, his voice carrying a hint of something she couldn't quite place. "Oklahoma, maybe, or Texas, softened by years somewhere else. How quaint." Victoria stirred her $16 latte with deliberate slowness, the silver spoon creating tiny whirlpools that seemed more interesting than the man across from her. "I suppose someone has to keep the cars running for those of us actually driving somewhere significant." She had no idea, no possible way of knowing, that in exactly 20 minutes, this man she was dismissing with such calculated cruelty would become the only thing standing between her and death. That those calloused hands she found so distasteful would save her life. That by the end of this day, everything she thought she knew about strength, about power, about what really mattered, would be shattered and rebuilt. "Tell me, Mr. Rivera," she continued, her tone suggesting she was doing him a favor by maintaining this conversation. "What exactly does one think about while lying under cars all day? I imagine the intellectual stimulation must be limited." Marcus took a slow sip of his coffee, and she noticed his eyes weren't just watching her anymore. They were tracking something behind her, something that had shifted in his posture so subtly she almost missed it. When he spoke, his voice had changed, just slightly, like a guitar string tightened half a turn. "Yesterday, I thought about compression ratios," he said evenly. "How an engine can take something as basic as air and fuel and create enough power to move 2 tons of metal at highway speeds. How every component has to work in perfect synchronization, or the whole system fails." He paused, his attention split now between her and whatever he was monitoring in his peripheral vision. "Also thought about my daughter's science project. She's studying hurricanes. Did you know the pressure differential in a Category 5 hurricane can literally explode a house from the inside out if the windows aren't properly vented?" "Your daughter," Victoria said, the words clipped. How domestic. I suppose that's why Sarah thought we'd have something in common. She has this quaint notion that every successful woman secretly yearns for the picket fence fantasy. But Marcus wasn't really listening anymore. 3 men had entered the cafe in the last 90 seconds, and everything about them was wrong. They moved with the forced casualness of people trying too hard to look natural. They'd chosen tables that gave them overlapping fields of view, strategic positions that would let them control the room. The one by the window kept touching his ribs, checking something concealed beneath his jacket. In that moment, though Victoria couldn't see it, Marcus Rivera ceased to be a simple mechanic and became something else entirely. Something forged in places where decisions were measured in milliseconds and mistakes were written in blood. His breathing shifted to a rhythm learned in combat zones, slow and steady, oxygenating blood for what his body knew was coming, even if his mind was still calculating probabilities. "Ms. Chen," he said, his voice carrying a new authority that made her pause mid-insult. "I need you to do something for me, and I need you not to ask questions." She laughed, bright and cutting. "Excuse me? You need me to—" In about 30 seconds, he interrupted, his voice low and urgent. "Something very bad is going to happen. When it does, you're going to slide out of your chair and move low and left toward the kitchen. Don't run, don't scream, don't look back. Can you do that?" Victoria's perfectly painted lips parted for another dismissive laugh, but something in his eyes stopped her cold. The mild-mannered mechanic was gone, replaced by something that made every primitive instinct in her body scream danger. Not danger from him, but danger he was recognizing, danger he was preparing to face. "This is insane," she started to say, but then she heard it too. The slight tremor in the conversation around them, the way the energy in the cafe had shifted like air pressure before a storm. Marcus's hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers, but close enough that she could feel the heat from his skin. 20 seconds, Victoria, please." And in that moment, suspended between her carefully constructed world of corporate warfare and something far more real, far more immediate, Victoria Chen had to make a choice. Trust this stranger with his work-worn hands and watchful eyes, or maintain her armor of dismissive superiority. 15 seconds, 10, 5. The world exploded into chaos. Wasp-eyed. The morning after their disastrous meeting was scheduled, Marcus Rivera stood in his daughter Emma's doorway at 6:47 a.m., watching her sleep with Mr. Rex, the stuffed dinosaur that had survived 3 apartments, 2 moves, and 1 particularly traumatic washing machine incident. 8 years old and already too wise for her age, Emma had learned to read the tension in his shoulders, the worry in his silence. "Em, time to wake up, baby." Her eyes opened immediately, brown like his, but holding an optimism he fought daily to preserve. "Is today the day you meet the money lady?" Marcus had mentioned the meeting casually, not wanting to build false hope. Sarah Martinez had sworn this Victoria Chen could transform their struggling auto shop into something sustainable. A venture capitalist interested in small businesses, she'd said. Someone who could help them escape the monthly scramble to make rent. That's today, yeah. Emma sat up, studying his face with that unsettling perception 8-year-olds shouldn't possess. "You're wearing your good shirt, the one without any oil stains." It was true. He'd spent 20 minutes selecting clothes that might bridge the gap between his world and wherever venture capitalists existed. The effort felt foolish now, like wearing a costume that fooled no one. Just want to make a good impression? Mom used to say you could fix anything except yourself. The mention of Angela stung, as it always did. 3 years since she'd decided motherhood was incompatible with finding herself in Costa Rica. 3 years of Emma asking fewer questions, but understanding more. Your mom was going through something complicated. She was going through Kyle's yoga teacher training. Emma's matter-of-fact tone made it worse somehow. Jenny's mom saw it on Instagram. They look very flexible and very happy. Marcus focused on braiding Emma's hair, a skill learned from YouTube tutorials, and the Dominican woman at the corner salon who'd taken pity on his early attempts. The purple backpack was already packed. Monday meant purple, Wednesday meant green, Friday meant purple again. He'd stopped questioning the logic. "Dad, if the money lady gives you money, can we get a real Christmas tree this year? Not the plastic one that leans?" We'll see what happens. They both knew "we'll see" meant probably not. But hope was free, even if everything else cost more than they had. At Rivera's Auto Repair, a shop so small the name barely fit on the sign, Marcus worked with the focused intensity of someone who knew every completed job meant another week of groceries, another month of Emma's after-school program. The shop had been his father's, back when the neighborhood was different, when people fixed things instead of replacing them. Tony, his only employee and unofficial uncle to Emma, looked up from under a Honda that had seen better decades. "You nervous about this meeting?" "Why would I be nervous?" "Because you've changed your shirt twice, and you keep checking your phone like it might explode." Marcus's phone rang before he could respond. Sarah Martinez, eternal optimist and occasional voice of reason. "Marcus, don't hate me." "That's never a good start, Sarah. Victoria Chen is particular. She's intense. But this could change everything for you and Emma. Just remember that underneath all that success, she's human. Underneath all what success? She runs $1 billion fund, featured in Forbes, that kind of success. Marcus felt his stomach drop. "Sarah, why would someone like that want to meet someone like me?" "Because I told her you were exactly what she was looking for." "Which is?" Sarah paused. "Someone real, someone who understands value beyond money. Trust me, Marcus. Sometimes people need what they don't know they're looking for." Meanwhile, across the city in a penthouse that cost more than Marcus would earn in 10 lifetimes, Victoria Chen was destroying someone's career with the efficiency most people brought to deleting emails. "The board has voted," she said to the CEO across from her, a man who'd built his company over 20 years, only to watch her firm dissect it like a science experiment. "You can resign with dignity and a generous package, or we can do this publicly. You have until end of business today." The man left with the shuffle of defeat, and Victoria felt nothing. No triumph, no guilt. Just the hollow echo that had been her constant companion since David left her standing at the altar 3 years ago. "Your 3 o'clock is confirmed," James, her assistant, said through the intercom. "The mechanic Sarah Martinez mentioned. Cancel it. Ms. Chen, you've canceled 3 times already." Sarah is quite insistent. Victoria stared at the city below, all those lives moving with purpose while she sat in her tower, isolated by success. Her father had been a mechanic before the drinking took him, before her mother worked 3 jobs to keep them afloat, before Victoria decided she'd never be powerless again. "Fine, but make it Café Meridian, neutral ground." She chose the cafe because she controlled it. Her table, her server, who knew exactly how she took her coffee, her territory where she set the rules. The morning of the meeting, Marcus dropped Emma at school, enduring her detailed explanation of why Tyler M. was obviously inferior to Tyler B. in both soccer skills and sandwich sharing. "Dad," Emma said as they pulled up to school, "the money lady, what if she's mean? Then we'll be nice anyway. What if she doesn't like you? Then she has questionable taste." Emma laughed, kissed his cheek, and bounded toward school. "Tell her about how you fixed Mrs. Chen's car for free when her husband was in the hospital. Tell her about teaching the kids from the shelter to change tires. Tell her the good stuff." But the good stuff, Marcus thought as he drove toward Manhattan, didn't translate to spreadsheets. Kindness wasn't a business model. Teaching disadvantaged kids basic auto repair didn't generate venture capital returns. Victoria arrived at Café Meridian 15 minutes early, arranging herself with tactical precision, laptop positioned to suggest constant demand for her attention. Phone visible, showing the stream of messages from people who needed her decisions. She wore armor today, a Tom Ford suit that announced her status before she spoke, shoes that cost more than most monthly salaries. She saw him enter exactly on time, and her first thought was that Sarah had lost her mind. This wasn't a business opportunity. This was clearly some misguided matchmaking attempt. The man looked like he'd stepped out of a truck commercial, honest work and simple pleasures. His shirt was clean but not new. His hands showed actual calluses, and there was the faintest suggestion of motor oil that cologne couldn't quite hide. But it was the way he moved that made her look twice. He scanned the room systematically. Exits, blind spots, potential threats. Military, she realized. Former military trying to fit into civilian clothes that never quite fit right. When his eyes found hers, she looked away. making him come to her, establishing the hierarchy from the first moment. Marcus approached with steady confidence, not swagger, but the certainty of someone who knew exactly who he was, even if it wasn't much by Manhattan standards. "Ms. Chen, I'm Marcus Rivera. Thank you for meeting me." He extended his hand, a normal gesture that somehow offended her. This assumption of equality, that she should touch his work-worn hand with fingers that signed deals worth more than he'd see in a lifetime. She let his hand hang there for exactly 3 seconds. He lowered it without embarrassment, sitting down unbothered by her rudeness. "So," she said, voice carrying winter despite the autumn warmth, "you're Marcus." Her gaze cataloged every detail that confirmed her assumptions. The watch that told time and nothing else. The wedding ring tan line that hadn't quite faded. The way he held his coffee cup, like someone who'd learned to be grateful for simple warmth. Just a mechanic? The words carried all the dismissive weight she intended. But something flickered in his eyes. Not shame, but assessment. He was reading her as much as she was dismissing him. "Just a mechanic," he agreed. "With a shop that's been in my family for 30 years, 4 employees we had to let go last year, and a daughter who deserves better than wondering if we'll make rent each month." The honesty surprised her. Most people led with their best, hid their struggles. He'd just laid his failure on the table like a card in a game she didn't know they were playing. "And you think I'm interested in failing businesses? I think you're interested in undervalued assets with potential for growth." Victoria laughed, sharp and bright. "Your shop is an asset? A garage that probably hasn't been updated since the Clinton administration? The land alone is worth $3 million. The customer base we've built over 3 decades is loyal beyond anything corporate chains can buy. The mechanical expertise can be replaced by any trade school graduate for $15 an hour." Marcus set down his coffee carefully. "Ms. Chen, why did you agree to this meeting? Sarah Martinez is persistent. Sarah Martinez is trying to set us up. We both know this isn't about business." Victoria blinked, thrown by his directness. "Then why did you come?" "Because I have a daughter who needs braces I can't afford. Because my shop is 1 bad month from closing. Because I'll sit through 100 awkward setups if one of them might lead to something that helps Emma have a better life." "And you think I'm that something?" Marcus studied her for a moment. "I think you're someone who's been hurt badly enough to turn pain into power. I think you've built walls so high you've forgotten what the view looks like from ground level. And I think Sarah believes we might remind each other that there's more than one way to be strong." Victoria felt exposed, seen in a way that made her want to run. This man, this mechanic with his simple life and complicated eyes, had just read her like a diagnostic report. "You don't know anything about me. I know you haven't touched your coffee, which means you don't actually like it, but order it because that's what's expected. I know you keep checking exits like someone who's learned that danger doesn't always announce itself. I know you're wearing shoes that hurt because beauty is supposed to hurt, because armor is heavy, because being untouchable requires being uncomfortable. Stop. I know because I recognize it. Different uniform, same war." Victoria stood abruptly. This was a mistake. But before she could leave, Marcus's entire demeanor changed. His body shifted to high alert, eyes tracking something behind her with an intensity that made her freeze. "Sit down," he said quietly, all traces of the gentle mechanic gone. "Right now, please." Something in his voice, the sudden authority of someone who'd given orders when lives depended on them, made her comply. "3 men just entered," he said, voice low and urgent. "They're spreading out in a pattern that's not random. This is about to go very bad." Victoria wanted to laugh, to dismiss his paranoia, but the transformation in him was too complete, too practiced. This wasn't delusion. This was recognition. "In about 30 seconds, Marcus continued, his hand moving across the table, not quite touching hers. "I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" She wanted to say no. That trust was a luxury she couldn't afford. But looking into his eyes, seeing something there that promised protection without asking for anything in return, she found herself nodding. The scream that shattered the cafe's calm came right on schedule. And in that moment, Victoria Chen's carefully controlled world exploded into chaos. But she wasn't alone in it. Marcus Rivera, the mechanic she'd dismissed, the man she'd tried to diminish, was already moving to keep her safe. The last normal moment of her old life ended with Marcus pulling her down, shielding her with his body, his voice steady in her ear. "I've got you. We're gonna get through this." And for the first time in 3 years, Victoria Chen believed someone who said they'd protect her. "Wanna do stays or..." The three men moved through Cafe Meridian with practiced coordination, their casual dispersal anything but random. Marcus tracked them while maintaining his conversation with Victoria, his body already preparing for violence while his voice remained steady. "When I tell you to move," he said quietly, eyes never leaving the men, "you go low and left toward the kitchen. Don't question it. Don't hesitate." Victoria's perfectly composed mask cracked slightly. "This is insane. We're in Tribeca. Things like this don't..." The first gunman pulled his weapon at exactly 3:15 p.m., right as the cafe reached peak afternoon capacity. The second and third followed within a heartbeat, their timing rehearsed. "Everyone on the ground! Now!" The leader's voice cracked with adrenaline and something else, desperation. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying impossible weight. Victoria's mind, that sophisticated machine that could process market volatility and predict economic trends, simply stopped. The gun pointed at the ceiling looked impossibly large, impossibly real. Her body wouldn't respond to basic commands. She was 7 years old again, hiding in her closet while her father's drunken rage shook the house, her mother's screams cutting through her small hands pressed over her ears. Marcus moved before thought, gripping her wrist and pulling her down, with enough force to send her designer heels skittering across marble. His body positioned itself between her and the gunman, becoming a human shield she hadn't asked for. "Breathe," he commanded, his voice different now, carrying the authority of someone who'd given orders in situations where following them meant survival. "In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, do it." The simple instruction gave her mind something to focus on, besides the paralysis of terror. She breathed, counting, while Marcus shifted slightly, improving his angle of protection while assessing the situation. The leader, young, nervous, sweating through his jacket despite the air conditioning, was trying to maintain control. "This doesn't have to be difficult. We want the money, that's all. Cooperate and everyone goes home." But Marcus could read the lie in his body language. This wasn't about the cafe's cash register. Coffee shops were mostly digital transactions now, maybe $1,000 on a good day. This was about something else. The second gunman, steadier, older, moved to the counter, forcing the baristas to empty the register. The third, barely out of his teens, was shaking so badly his gun wavered between targets. "You!" The young one pointed at an elderly couple near Victoria's abandoned table. "Empty your pockets." The old man's hands trembled as he pulled out a wallet worn soft with age, probably containing pictures of grandchildren, a lifetime reduced to $40 cash and credit cards that would be canceled within hours. Victoria pressed herself against the cold marble floor, hyper-aware of Marcus beside her. His hand had found a heavy water pitcher, testing its weight with the same precision she used to evaluate investment portfolios. There was no hesitation in his movements, just calculation. "They're not professionals," Marcus whispered, barely audible. "Look at their positions. They've created blind spots. The young one keeps checking his phone. They're on a timeline." "Please don't do anything stupid," Victoria breathed back. "Stupid would be letting them control this completely. They're going to escalate. It's in their body language." The leader pulled out his phone, checking the time. 3:18. Whatever they were really here for would happen soon. Marcus's mind ran through possibilities: publicity stunt, political statement, personal vendetta. But then the leader's phone rang, and his face changed as he listened. "No, we're doing it," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "I don't care what you..." He stopped, listened, and his face went pale. "Please, she's just 7. I'll get your money, I promise." The words changed everything. Marcus felt Victoria tense beside him as understanding dawned. This wasn't a robbery. It was a ransom payment. The leader, Dylan, the older gunman called him, hung up and looked around the cafe with eyes that had gone from desperate to destroyed. "Change of plans," he announced, voice shaking. "Everyone stays calm and..." A woman near the window knocked over a display of coffee mugs, sending them crashing to the floor. Everyone turned to look, that instinctive human reaction to sudden noise. And in that moment of distraction, the young gunman panicked. His gun swung wildly, finger moving to the trigger, aimed at a mother holding her toddler. Marcus moved. The water pitcher left his hand in a perfect arc, striking the young gunman's temple with a sound like a bell being rung. The kid dropped instantly, his gun firing once into the ceiling as he fell. "Kitchen now!" Marcus commanded Victoria, already moving toward the fallen weapon. But Victoria didn't run. Something in her, some instinct she didn't know she possessed, made her grab the fire extinguisher from the wall. As the older gunman spun toward Marcus, she swung it with all the force her gym-toned arms could generate. The metal cylinder connected with his skull with a satisfying crack. He crumpled, his gun sliding across the marble floor. Dylan stood frozen, his gun wavering between Marcus and the hostages, tears streaming down his face. "My daughter," he said, the words barely audible. "They have my daughter." Marcus had secured both fallen weapons, checking them with practiced efficiency. Now he stood slowly, hands visible but ready. "Talk to me, Dylan. Who has your daughter?" "Does it matter?" Dylan's laugh was broken glass. "Isabella, 7 years old, loves butterflies and chocolate ice cream. 3 days ago, they took her from school. Said I had 72 hours to get them $100,000. Victoria found herself standing, the fire extinguisher still gripped in her hands. "So, you rob a café?" "They said it had to be public, had to make the news. They're watching." Dylan's gun hand shook violently. "But someone called the cops. I can hear the sirens. They said if cops showed up, they'd—" His phone rang again. He answered with trembling fingers, listened for 3 seconds, then screamed. The sound was pure anguish, a father's heart breaking in real time. "They're going to kill her. Because of the cops, because I failed, they're going to kill my baby." Marcus stepped forward slowly, hands raised. "Dylan, listen to me. I have a daughter too, Emma, 8 years old. If someone took her, I'd do exactly what you're doing." "Then you know I can't stop. I can't. You can let us help." The words came from Victoria, surprising everyone, including herself. She set down the fire extinguisher, stepping out from behind the counter. "I have money," she said simply. "More than you need." Dylan laughed bitterly. "You think they'll just take a check? You think—" "I think you're running out of time arguing with us instead of saving your daughter." Sirens were getting closer. Through the windows, red and blue lights were beginning to flash. The mathematics of the situation were changing by the second. Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A text from Tony at the shop. "Saw the news? You okay?" The news. This was already on the news. "Dylan," Marcus said urgently. "If this is on TV, if they're watching, they know you tried. That might be enough." "Might be isn't good enough when it's your kid." The police were outside now, taking positions, following protocol that cared nothing for the human cost inside. Victoria pulled out her phone, ignoring the guns, ignoring the danger, typing with the same focus she brought to billion-dollar deals. "What are you doing?" Dylan demanded. "Calling my assistant. James?" "Yes, I know there's a situation. Listen carefully. I need 100,000 in cash within the hour." "Yes, cash." She paused, listening. "I don't care what strings you have to pull. Make it happen." Dylan stared at her. "You don't even know me." "I know you're a father trying to save his daughter. That's enough." The police loudspeaker crackled to life. "This is the NYPD. The building is surrounded. Release the hostages and come out with your hands visible." Dylan's phone rang again. This time he put it on speaker, and a digitally distorted voice filled the cafe. "You failed, Dylan. The police are there. The deal is off." "Please," Dylan begged. "I'll get the money. Someone here, she's going to—" "Too late. You have 1 hour to say goodbye to—" Victoria grabbed the phone from Dylan's hand. "This is Victoria Chen. I'm the CEO of Meridian Capital. I have your money." Silence on the other end. "Did you hear me? $100,000. Cash. But I need proof the girl is alive." "This isn't your business, Ms. Chen." The voice knew her name. This wasn't random. They'd researched, planned, known who would be in the cafe. "Everything is business," Victoria replied, her CEO voice cutting through fear. "You want money? I have money. Dylan wants his daughter. Simple transaction, unless you're not actually interested in the money." More silence then. 1 hour, Fort Washington Park, the lighthouse. Come alone with the money or the girl dies. The line went dead. Marcus looked at Victoria with something between admiration and horror. You just negotiated with kidnappers. I negotiate with worse people every day. At least kidnappers are honest about what they're taking. Dylan had collapsed to his knees, gun forgotten on the floor. An hour. How do we? We don't, Marcus said firmly. This is a trap. They'll take the money and kill the girl anyway. That's how these things work. Then what do you suggest? Victoria snapped. Marcus was already on his phone, scrolling through contacts he'd hoped never to use again. I know people, from my service, people who handle situations like this. Military? Not anymore. Private contractors. They specialize in extraction. Extraction? Victoria's mind was racing. You mean? I mean, they get people back, but it's not legal, not clean, and definitely not safe. The police were using the loudspeaker again, demanding surrender, promising that no one would be hurt if everyone cooperated. Standard lies that everyone knew were lies, but protocol demanded be said. Victoria looked at Dylan, broken on the floor, then at Marcus, steady and competent in crisis, then at the other hostages, terrified, but trying to be brave. Make the call, she said. Marcus stepped away, speaking quietly but urgently into his phone. Victoria knelt beside Dylan. We're going to get your daughter back. How can you know that? Because I don't fail when I decide something matters. And right now, your daughter matters. She stood, addressing the other hostages with the same authority she used in boardrooms. Everyone stays calm. When the police come in, you tell them Dylan was coerced, that his daughter was kidnapped. You tell them Victoria Chen took responsibility for resolving the situation. Lady, you can't just... One man started. I can and I am. Does anyone here have a problem with saving a 7-year-old girl? Silence. Then the elderly woman, whose husband had been robbed, spoke up. That poor baby. You do whatever you need to do. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the group. New York might be hard, but it wasn't heartless. Marcus returned. Jake and his team can be at the park in 40 minutes. They'll set up surveillance, track whoever shows up. But, Victoria, you can't actually go. It's too dangerous. Of course I'm going. These people are killers, and I'm someone with $100,000 they want. They won't kill me until they have it. That's not reassuring. Victoria pulled out her phone again. James, the cash ready? Good. Bring it to... She looked at Marcus. My shop, he said. Rivera's Auto Repair on 10th Avenue. You heard him? And James, bring the Bentley. If I'm meeting kidnappers, I'm doing it in style. Despite everything, Marcus almost smiled. You're insane. I'm practical. Rich woman in expensive car with cash is believable. It's what they expect. Dylan looked between them, hope and despair warring on his face. Why are you doing this? Either of you? Marcus thought of Emma, safe at school, protected by nothing more than the assumption that the world was basically good. Because someone has to. Victoria thought of all the hostile takeovers she'd orchestrated, all the lives she'd disrupted with spreadsheets and shareholder value. Because for once, I can use my money for something that matters. The police had given up on negotiation. The tactical team was preparing to breach. They had minutes, maybe less. Everyone needs to be on the ground when they come in, Marcus instructed. Hands visible, no sudden movements. Dylan, you're going to be arrested, but we'll handle the rest. My daughter? We'll get her back, Victoria promised. I swear to you, we'll get her back. The door exploded inward. Police flooded the cafe, shouting commands, weapons drawn. Everyone dropped, hands visible, following Marcus's instructions. Victoria found herself on the floor again, but this time not in terror, this time with purpose. As the police sorted through the chaos, as they arrested Dylan and took statements, as they tried to understand what had happened, she kept thinking about Isabella Dillon, 7 years old, loving butterflies and chocolate ice cream, waiting for a rescue that might never come, unless they made it come. The officer interviewing her was young, trying to be professional. Ms. Chen, you're saying Dylan Matthews was coerced. His daughter was kidnapped. Check the reports. Isabella Dillon, taken 3 days ago. The ransom demand was real. That doesn't excuse... Officer? Victoria's voice could have frozen hell. Are you really going to arrest a desperate father while his 7-year-old daughter is being held by kidnappers? Is that the story you want on the news? Because I promise you, I will make sure everyone knows that the NYPD prioritized procedure over a child's life. The officer's supervisor, older and wiser, stepped in. We'll look into the kidnapping immediately. We already have people looking into it, Marcus said. Private security specialists. Sir, I have to advise against any vigilante action. And I have to advise you that we're going to save that little girl with or without your help. They were released 2 hours later, after statements and warnings and official discouragement of any private intervention. Dylan was held pending investigation, but his charging was delayed while they verified the kidnapping. Outside the precinct, Victoria's Bentley waited, James standing beside it with a briefcase. The cash, Ms. Chen, though I must express my strong concern about... Noted and ignored James. She took the briefcase, then looked at Marcus. Your shop? Jake's already there. His team is moving into position at the park. They drove in silence for a moment, the reality of what they were about to do settling over them. This morning I thought you were just another arrogant executive, Marcus said quietly. This morning I thought you were just another nobody, Victoria replied. And now? She looked at him, this man who'd shielded her with his body, who'd recognized danger before it announced itself, who was risking everything to save a stranger's child. Now I think we're both more than we seem. The shop was small, crowded with Jake's team, 4 men who looked like they'd stepped out of a military thriller. Jake himself was everything Victoria expected, scarred, efficient, constantly moving. Ms. Chen, Mr. Rivera says you're the money. I'm the money. And you're really going to walk into a kidnapper's trap with $100 grand in cash? Unless you have a better idea. Jake smiled, sharp and dangerous. Actually, I do. But you're not going to like it. He spread out a tablet showing satellite imagery of Fort Washington Park. They chose this location because it's isolated but public, multiple escape routes, good sight lines. They'll see us coming from any direction. So we don't come from any direction. We're already there. He tapped the screen. 2 of my men are already in position. 1 in the lighthouse, 1 in the trees. When you make the exchange, we'll have eyes on everything. And then we follow them, track them back to where they're holding the girl, extract her. Victoria studied the map. What if they just shoot me and take the money? They won't, Marcus said. You're too high profile. Your death would bring federal attention they don't want. That's not reassuring either. Ms. Chen, Jake's voice was serious. I've done this before. Nigeria, Colombia, Afghanistan. Kidnappers follow patterns. They want the money more than they want blood. You go in confident, controlled. You demand proof of life. You make the exchange. You leave. Then we handle the rest. And if something goes wrong? Jake pulled out what looked like a lipstick tube. Panic button. Twist the bottom. We come in hot. But that's last resort. Gunfire means the girl might get hurt. Victoria took the device. Its weight negligible, but its implications heavy. How long do I have? Marcus checked his watch. 20 minutes to get there. She stood, smoothing her suit, rebuilding her CEO armor. Then, let's go save Isabella Dillon. As they prepared to leave, Emma called Marcus's phone. He almost didn't answer, but knew she'd worry if he didn't. Dad, are you okay? Jenny's mom said there was something on the news about a robbery. I'm fine, baby. Just helping someone with something. Someone important? Marcus looked at Victoria, who was reviewing Jake's instructions with focused intensity. Yeah, Em, someone important. Okay. Love you, Dad. Be safe. Love you too. He hung up to find Victoria watching him. She sounds sweet. She's everything. Dylan's daughter is everything to him too. That's why we're doing this. Victoria nodded, picked up the briefcase, and headed for the door. Let's go be heroes then. Marcus caught her arm gently. Victoria, you don't have to do this. We can find another way. She looked at his hand on her arm, then at his face, seeing genuine concern from someone who hours ago had been a stranger. Yes, I do. I've spent 3 years taking things from people, companies, jobs, security. Today, I give something back. They drove toward Fort Washington Park in gathering dusk, toward danger and possibility, toward a choice that would change everything. In the back seat, Victoria held the briefcase containing more money than most people saw in years, willing to trade it for a child she'd never met. Marcus watched her in the mirror, this woman who'd transformed from ice queen to warrior in the span of an afternoon, and realized Sarah Martinez had been right about one thing. Sometimes people needed what they didn't know they were looking for. Part 4. CAO Trow 1, 4502. Fort Washington Park stretched along the Hudson River like a wound in Manhattan's polished facade, its lighthouse a relic from when the city still remembered it was surrounded by water. Victoria stood at the entrance, briefcase in hand, watching the last of the daylight bleed into the river. "Can you hear me?" Marcus's voice came through the nearly invisible earpiece Jake had given her. "Clear," she replied, her lips barely moving. "Jake's team has eyes on you. 2 men spotted near the lighthouse, could be lookouts. Remember, confident but not aggressive. You're a rich woman doing a good deed, not a threat." Victoria walked toward the lighthouse, her heels clicking on the stone path with deliberate rhythm. Every instinct she'd developed in the corporate world screamed that this was wrong, that walking into a trap with $100,000 was the opposite of everything she'd learned about survival. The lighthouse stood against the darkening sky, its red brick facade crumbling in places, windows dark and empty like dead eyes. A figure emerged from the shadows, not threatening, just present. Male, 30s, wearing work clothes that didn't quite fit the manual laborer image he was trying to project. "Ms. Chen, I want proof she's alive." The man pulled out a phone, showed her a video. Isabella Dillon, still in her school uniform, holding today's newspaper. The girl was crying, but appeared unharmed. "The money?" Victoria opened the briefcase, letting him see the neat stacks of bills. "Where is she?" "Not your concern. The money for the father's debt. That's the deal." "The father's in custody. The debt transfers to me now." The man laughed. "You want to take on his problems? Rich people really are different." Through her earpiece, Jake's voice, "Second man approaching your 6. Stay calm." Victoria didn't turn, didn't react to the footsteps behind her. "The money for the girl's safety. That's my only concern." Noble, stupid, but noble. The first man reached for the briefcase. Victoria pulled it back slightly. "I want to talk to her. Proof she's still alive right now." That wasn't the deal. The deal changed when Dylan got arrested. "You want the money? I talked to the girl." The man's jaw tightened, but he pulled out his phone, dialed, spoke in rapid Spanish. Then he held it out to Victoria. A small voice came through. "Hello? Isabella, my name is Victoria. I'm a friend of your daddy's. I want to go home." The words were barely whispered, thick with tears. "You will, sweetheart. Very soon. Are you hurt?" "No, just scared." "Be brave a little longer, okay?" The man snatched the phone back. "Satisfied?" Victoria handed over the briefcase. The man opened it, did a quick count, nodded to his partner. "Pleasure doing business, Ms. Chen. Walk away now. Don't follow us. Don't involve the police further, or the girl dies." Victoria turned and walked back toward the park entrance, every step measured, controlled. Behind her, she heard car doors slam, an engine start. "They're moving," Jake's voice reported. "Black SUV, heading north. My team is following. You did good, Ms. Chen. Get back to the shop." But as Victoria reached her Bentley, her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Ms. Chen," the digitally distorted voice from before. "You think you're clever, having us followed?" Her blood went cold. "I don't know what you're talking about." "The 2 men in the Honda 3 cars behind us, the motorcycle that's been paralleling our route, call them off, or Isabella Dillon dies in the next 60 seconds. Through her earpiece, Jake cursed. "They made us. Pull back, all units pull back." "I'm alone," Victoria said into the phone. "If someone's following you." 50 seconds. Victoria's mind raced. They'd anticipated surveillance, prepared for it, which meant, "You never intended to let her go," she said. "The money was just bonus. You're going to kill her anyway." 40 seconds. "Wait, I have a proposition." 30 seconds. "Me for her. I'm worth $50 million. My company will pay 10 times what Dylan owed for my safe return." Silence on the line. Through her earpiece, Marcus's voice urgent. "Victoria, no, don't." 20 seconds. "Think about it," Victoria pressed. 100,000 versus millions. I'm offering myself as collateral. The girl means nothing to you. I mean everything to my shareholders. 10 seconds. Meet me at the Riverside Drive overpass. Alone. We make the trade. 5. Yes or no. A pause that lasted eternity. Then, Riverside Drive, 10 minutes. Come alone or both of you die. The line went dead. Through her earpiece, chaos erupted. Jake. Absolutely not. This is suicide. Marcus. Victoria, get back to the shop. We'll find another way. But Victoria was already driving, the Bentley's engine purring as she navigated toward Riverside Drive. They're going to kill her, she said simply. They were always going to kill her. She can identify them. They'll kill you too, Marcus argued. Maybe. But I'm betting they're greedy enough to try for the bigger payday first. This isn't a hostile takeover, Victoria. You can't negotiate your way out of this. Watch me. She pulled up to the overpass, a concrete structure that created deep shadows perfect for concealment. The same SUV was waiting, engine running. 2 men got out. One held Isabella Dillon, his hand gripping her small shoulder. The girl was sobbing quietly, trembling with exhaustion and fear. Ms. Chen, the apparent leader said, you're either very brave or very stupid. I'm very rich. That's all that matters to you. Through her earpiece, Jake, I have a sniper in position. Say the word. Victoria stepped forward slowly. Let her go. Take me. My company will pay whatever you ask. The man considered. How do we know they'll pay? Victoria pulled out her phone, called James on speaker. James, if someone were to kidnap me, what would Meridian Capital's response be? James's voice was confused but steady. The board has a $10 million ransom insurance policy for executive kidnapping, standard procedure for overseas operations, but it would apply domestically as well. Thank you, James. She hung up, looked at the kidnappers. 10 million, verified, insured, guaranteed. The 2 men exchanged looks. The one holding Isabella loosened his grip slightly. The girl goes free, Victoria continued. You take me, make your demands, get paid, everyone wins. Except you. I'm betting on my value keeping me alive. Through the earpiece, Marcus, Victoria, please don't do this. Think about... She pulled out the earpiece, dropped it on the ground, crushed it under her heel. The gesture wasn't lost on the kidnappers. No more surveillance, no more games. The girl for me, final offer. The leader nodded to his partner, who released Isabella. The girl stood frozen, unsure what to do. Run, sweetheart, Victoria said gently. Run to the street, find a police officer, tell them your name. Isabella looked between Victoria and her captors, then ran. Her small feet slapped against pavement as she disappeared into the darkness. Your turn, the leader said. Victoria walked forward, hands visible, accepting the grip on her arm as they pulled her toward the SUV. But as they reached the vehicle, the night exploded. Flashbang grenades detonated, filling the air with blinding light and deafening sound. Victoria, expecting something but not this, dropped to the ground instinctively. Through the chaos, she heard Jake's team moving in, precise and lethal. Marcus appeared through the smoke, pulling her behind cover as gunfire erupted. The kidnappers, caught completely off guard, tried to respond but were overwhelmed in seconds. I told you to go back to the shop, Marcus said, checking her for injuries. Since when do I take orders? Since you started trading yourself for kidnapped children. The gunfire stopped. Jake's team had both kidnappers on the ground, zip-tied and unconscious. Sirens were approaching. Someone had heard the commotion. Isabella? Victoria asked urgently. Safe, Jake reported, jogging over. My guy grabbed her 2 blocks away. She's with NYPD now, asking for her father. Relief flooded through Victoria so intensely her knees almost buckled. Marcus steadied her, his arm around her waist. That was insane, he said. It worked. You could have died. But I didn't, and neither did she. The police arrived in force, followed immediately by news vans. Someone had leaked that Victoria Chen, the billionaire CEO, had been involved in a kidnapping rescue. The story was too good to ignore. 3 hours later, at the police station, Victoria sat in an interrogation room that felt remarkably similar to the one she'd been in earlier. Detective Morrison, the same woman from the café, looked at her with exhausted disapproval. Ms. Chen, Do you have any idea how many laws you've broken today? Do you have any idea how little I care? Morrison's eye twitched. Ransom payment. Conspiracy with private military contractors. Reckless endangerment. Interfering with... A 7-year-old girl is safe. Her father, who was driven to desperation by criminals you couldn't catch, will be released to be with her. The actual kidnappers are in custody. Explain to me which part of this outcome you object to. The part where you acted outside the law. The law wasn't saving Isabella Dillon. Morrison leaned back in her chair. The FBI was working the case. The FBI was following procedure while a clock ticked down on a child's life. They stared at each other across the table, two women who understood power but defined it differently. A knock interrupted them. A federal prosecutor entered, young, ambitious, clearly unhappy. Ms. Chen, I'm Assistant U.S. Attorney David Park. Victoria's blood went cold. David, her David, former David, the man who'd left her at the altar 3 years ago, now standing in a federal prosecutor's suit, holding her freedom in his manicured hands. David! The name was ice in her mouth. Detective Morrison looked between them, sensing history. You two know each other? We were engaged, David said flatly. Past tense very much emphasized. I'll leave you two alone, Morrison said, escaping gratefully. David sat down, his familiar cologne bringing back memories Victoria had buried under concrete and spite. Vicky? Ms. Chen, you've had quite a day. Hostage situation, vigilante justice, ransom payment to criminals. A child is safe. You broke numerous federal laws. A child is safe. You think that absolves everything? Victoria leaned forward. I think you owe me more than you could ever repay. So whatever power play this is, skip to the end. David's jaw tightened. He'd kept his looks, she noticed. Still had that patrician profile that photographed well, the kind of face that advanced in government service. You're looking at 20 years, he said. Multiple federal charges. Your assets will be frozen. Your company will distance itself. You'll lose everything. I lost everything 3 years ago. This is just stuff. This is your life, Victoria. Your freedom. Why do you care? David was quiet for a moment. Because despite everything, I don't want to see you destroyed. Not like this. You just wanted to destroy me yourself? I wanted to be free of you. There's a difference. The words hung between them. 3 years of unspoken truth finally voiced. I was suffocating, David continued. Your ambition, your need to control everything, your inability to just be. Everything was a transaction, a negotiation, a power play. Even our wedding was more about the merger of two successful people than love. Victoria felt tears threatening, pushed them down. So you left me at the altar, in front of everyone. I left a business arrangement masquerading as a marriage, but this... He gestured at the arrest paperwork. This is different. You saved a child. You risked everything for someone else. That's not the Victoria I knew. People change. Do they? Or did you just find a new kind of power to wield? Before Victoria could answer, Marcus entered with Morrison. She's not talking without counsel, Marcus said firmly. David looked at Marcus, assessing. And you are? Marcus Rivera. I was with Ms. Chen today. The mechanic from the café. David's tone carried subtle dismissal. The veteran who helped save 7-year-old Isabella Dillon, Marcus corrected. They sized each other up, David polished and political, Marcus rough and real. Mr. Rivera, David said slowly, are you aware that your association with Ms. Chen's crimes makes you potentially liable as a co-conspirator? Are you aware that threatening me won't make her charges disappear? Morrison intervened. Gentlemen, the issue at hand is what happens next. David stood. What happens next is Ms. Chen gets a lawyer, a very good one, because I'll be personally prosecuting this case. He left, his exit as dramatic as his departure from Victoria's life had been. Morrison sighed. You want some free advice? That man is going to destroy you. Not because of the law, but because you're unfinished business. He can try, Victoria said quietly. Ms. Chen. Morrison's voice softened slightly. Isabella Dillon is asking for you. She won't calm down. Keeps saying the pretty lady saved her. Her father, too. Dylan Matthews wants to thank you before he's processed. They were led to a different room, where Isabella sat with a social worker, clutching a teddy bear someone had found for her. When she saw Victoria, she ran to her, small arms wrapping around Victoria's legs. "You saved me," Isabella whispered into Victoria's expensive suit. Victoria knelt down, hugging the girl properly. "You saved yourself by being brave." "I was really scared." "Me too." "You were?" "Terrified. But sometimes we do scary things for good reasons." Dylan was brought in, handcuffs removed for the reunion. He fell to his knees, holding Isabella like she might disappear. "Thank you," he said to Victoria through tears. "Thank you." "Take care of her," Victoria replied. "That's all the thanks I need." As they watched father and daughter reunite, Marcus stood beside Victoria. "You did a good thing today. I also apparently committed multiple federal crimes. Worth it?" Victoria watched Isabella show her father the teddy bear, watched Dylan's face transform with joy and relief. "Without question. Even if David destroys you? Especially then. If I'm going to be destroyed, at least it's for something that mattered." Marcus studied her profile. "You're not who I thought you were. Neither are you. Sarah's going to be insufferable. She'll claim she knew we were perfect for each other." Victoria looked at him sharply. "We're not. This isn't. I know, but we make a good team. We make a legally questionable team that's probably going to federal prison. Still better than most partnerships I've seen." Despite everything, Victoria smiled. "You're insane," says the woman who offered herself as ransom for a stranger's child. "It was strategically sound. It was heroic. Heroes don't wear Tom Ford suits. This one does." They were interrupted by James arriving with a team of lawyers, expensive suits filling the small room like corporate cavalry. "Ms. Chen," the lead attorney said, "we need to discuss strategy. The federal prosecutor seems to have a personal interest in your case." "He's my ex-fiancé," Victoria said simply. The lawyers exchanged glances that calculated billable hours multiplying. "That complicates things." "Everything about today has been complicated. We can fight this. The public sympathy angle alone, the public will side with the little girl until the media reminds them I'm a billionaire who played vigilante. Then I become the rich woman who thought she was above the law. So we negotiate. With David, he doesn't negotiate. He wins." Marcus's phone buzzed. Emma texting, "Dad, are you coming home? The news says something about a kidnapping." "I have to go," he told Victoria. "Emma needs..." "Go, be with your daughter." "What about you?" Victoria looked at her army of lawyers. "I'll be fighting for my freedom. It's what I do best." As Marcus left, he turned back. "Victoria, this isn't over." "No," she agreed. "It's just beginning." The lawyers circled her like expensive sharks, already planning defense strategies and media narratives. But Victoria barely heard them. She was thinking about Isabella Dillon, safe with her father. About Marcus, who'd shielded her without being asked. About David, who'd returned to her life at the worst possible moment. About how doing the right thing could cost everything, and how, for the first time in her life, she was willing to pay that price. The news broke at 6 a.m. the next morning. Billionaire vigilante, Victoria Chen, faces federal charges for kidnapping intervention. By 7 a.m., it was trending on every platform. By 8 a.m., the Meridian Capital Board had called an emergency meeting. Marcus watched the coverage from his shop while Emma ate breakfast at his desk, her math homework spread between them. "Dad, is that the lady from yesterday?" Marcus had tried to shield Emma from the news, but kids had phones, kids had friends with phones, and secrets didn't keep in the digital age. "Yeah, baby, that's her." She looked sad in that picture. The footage showed Victoria being escorted from the police station at 3 a.m., flanked by lawyers but looking exhausted, her designer armor finally cracked. She had a hard day. But she saved that little girl, right? Jenny's mom said she traded herself for a kidnapped girl. It's complicated, Em. Adults always say that when they mean something's unfair. Marcus's phone rang. Sarah Martinez, probably calling to either gloat about her matchmaking or panic about the federal charges. "Marcus, I just saw the news. Are you okay? Is Victoria okay?" "I'm fine. Victoria's dealing with things. They're saying she could go to prison for 20 years. They're saying a lot of things. Marcus, this is my fault. If I hadn't pushed you two to meet, then Isabella Dillon might be dead. Sarah, Victoria made her choices. They were the right choices. The right choices don't usually end in federal prison. Marcus wanted to argue, but his phone was beeping with another call. Unknown number. Sarah, I have to go. He switched calls. Rivera. Mr. Rivera, this is James, Ms. Chen's assistant. She needs to see you. Can you come to the Meridian Capital offices? When? Now, if possible. The board meeting starts in an hour, and she needs someone in her corner who isn't being paid to be there. Marcus looked at Emma. I have to take my daughter to school first. Bring her. We have a daycare facility for employees. She'll be safe and entertained. 20 minutes later, Marcus and Emma entered the Meridian Capitol building, a glass tower that seemed to scrape the sky itself. Everything was marble and chrome, designed to intimidate and impress. Fancy, Emma whispered. Too fancy, Marcus replied. They were escorted to the executive floor, where chaos reigned beneath a veneer of professional calm. Assistants moved with urgent purpose. Phones rang constantly. And through it all, Victoria stood in the conference room, facing a wall of suits that looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. Ms. Chen, the lead board member, an older man with silver hair and cold eyes, was saying, "The liability you've created is catastrophic. Our insurance providers are threatening to cancel. 3 major investors have already pulled out." "A child is alive because of what I did," Victoria replied, her voice steady despite the exhaustion written on her face. "A child whose father attempted armed robbery. The optics are terrible." "The optics?" Victoria's laugh was sharp. "A 7-year-old was kidnapped and you're worried about optics? We're worried about the company you were hired to lead, not to use as your personal platform for vigilante justice." James appeared at Marcus's elbow. "Mr. Rivera, the daycare is through here. Emma will be—" "I want to stay with Dad," Emma said firmly, her hand gripping Marcus's tighter. Victoria noticed them through the glass, and something in her expression shifted. She excused herself from the board, stepping out to meet them. "You came," she said to Marcus, surprise evident. "James said you needed backup. I need a miracle. The board is going to vote me out." She noticed Emma, and her expression softened. "You must be Emma. Your dad talks about you constantly." Emma studied Victoria with that intense focus children brought to important assessments. "You're prettier than you looked on the news." "The news rarely flatters anyone." "Dad says you saved a little girl." "Your dad helped. He's good at helping. He fixed Mrs. Rodriguez's car for free when her husband lost his job." Victoria looked at Marcus. "Of course he did." The conference room door opened and David walked in. The federal prosecutor who'd threatened her with 20 years, her ex-fiancé who'd destroyed her ability to trust, now standing in her boardroom like he owned it. "David!" Victoria's voice was ice. "What are you doing here?" "The board invited me. They wanted to understand their exposure." He looked at Marcus and Emma. "Mr. Rivera, and this must be your daughter." "We should go," Marcus said, recognizing the tension. "No," Victoria said quickly. "Please stay." David addressed the board, his voice carrying the authority of federal power. Meridian Capital faces potential RICO charges for financing illegal military operations. Ms. Chen used company resources to coordinate with private military contractors. The liability extends beyond her personal actions. The silver-haired board member nodded. "Our lawyers concur. Ms. Chen, we're calling for a vote of no confidence." "You can't." "We can, and we are. Security will escort you out after you collect your personal items." Victoria stood there, the empire she'd built crumbling in real time. Everything she'd worked for, sacrificed for, compromised for, gone in a boardroom coup she should have seen coming. "I need 10 minutes, she said quietly, "to clear my office." 5, the silver-haired man countered, like this was just another negotiation. Victoria walked to her office, Marcus and Emma following. The space was enormous, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a view of Manhattan that looked like ownership itself. "Wow," Emma breathed. "You can see everything from here." "You can see everything but what matters," Victoria replied, beginning to pack personal items into a box. A photo from a business magazine cover, an award for Female CEO of the Year, tokens of a life that had just ended. "Victoria," Marcus started. "Don't." Please don't try to make this better. I knew this would happen. David's just accelerating the timeline. Why is he doing this? Victoria paused in her packing. Because he can. Because I embarrassed him once by existing, by being successful without him. Because some men can't stand women who don't need them. You're wrong. They turned to find David in the doorway. I'm doing this because you broke the law, he continued. Because you think rules don't apply to you. I think rules shouldn't protect kidnappers and punish rescuers. The law doesn't care what you think. Emma stepped forward, all 4 feet of 8-year-old indignation. You're mean. David looked down at her, disconcerted. I'm a prosecutor. I enforce. You're mean and you're wrong, and my dad says people who kick others when they're down are bullies, even if they wear suits. Emma, Marcus warned, but Victoria knelt down to Emma's level. Thank you, she said simply. But sometimes bullies win. Not in movies. This isn't a movie, sweetheart. Security arrived, 2 guards who looked uncomfortable with their task. Ms. Chen, we need to escort you out. Victoria stood, picked up her box, and walked toward the door with the dignity of deposed royalty. As they waited for the elevator, she turned to Marcus. Take care of Emma. Don't let this touch her. What about you? I'll survive. I always do. But as the elevator doors closed, Marcus saw the truth in her eyes. She wouldn't survive this, not intact. Everything she'd built her identity on was gone. 3 days passed. Victoria's assets were frozen pending investigation. Her apartment was seized as potential evidence. Her name was poison in the financial world she'd conquered. She sat in a budget motel room in Queens, paid for with cash she'd had in her purse, watching news coverage of her downfall. The media had turned on her completely. The woman who'd saved Isabella Dillon became the rogue billionaire who'd endangered lives with her vigilante complex. Her phone, one of the few things not seized, rang. Marcus. Where are you? Nowhere important. Victoria, where are you? She gave him the address, too tired to maintain walls. He arrived an hour later with bags of Chinese food and Emma in tow. She insisted, he explained as Emma hugged Victoria like they were old friends. The news people are being mean to you, Emma announced. So we brought orange chicken. Orange chicken fixes everything. They ate on the motel bed, using plastic forks and paper plates. The contrast to Victoria's usual 5-star existence so stark, it was almost funny. I've lost everything, Victoria said quietly while Emma was in the bathroom. You haven't lost everything. You're free, you're alive, and Isabella Dillon is home with her father. I'm about to be not free for 20 years. We'll fight it. With what? My accounts are frozen. My lawyers quit when the retainer check bounced. I'm toxic to anyone who might help. Then we find another way. There is no other way. David holds all the cards. He always has. Emma returned, curling up against Victoria's side like it was the most natural thing in the world. My mom left us, she said suddenly. Victoria looked at Marcus, who seemed as surprised as she was. She said she loved us but needed to find herself, Emma continued. Dad cried for a long time. He thought I didn't know, but I did. Emma, Marcus started. But then he got better. He fixed cars and fixed himself and fixed our life. So you can too. Victoria felt tears she'd been holding back for days finally fall. This 8-year-old girl was offering her hope when highly paid professionals had offered only surrender. It's not that simple, sweetheart. Nothing's simple. That's why we have each other. That night, after Marcus had taken Emma home, Victoria sat alone in the motel room, considering her options. She could run. She had enough cash to get to a non-extradition country. She could fight. But with no resources, that seemed impossible. Or she could surrender, plead guilty, hope for mercy from a system that had never shown her any. Her phone rang. Unknown number. Ms. Chen, this is Dylan Matthews, the father whose desperation had started everything. Dylan, how's Isabella? Safe, happy, traumatized, but getting help. He paused. I wanted to thank you. You don't need to. I do. You saved her when you didn't have to, when it cost you everything. It was the right thing to do. The right thing destroyed your life. Then it was still worth it. Dylan was quiet for a moment. I've been talking to people, other parents, community organizers. What you did resonated. There's a vigil planned tomorrow. Outside the federal courthouse. People want to show support. That's kind but unnecessary. Ms. Chen, you stood up for my daughter when the system failed her. Let us stand up for you. After he hung up, Victoria stared at the phone. Public support wouldn't change the law, wouldn't move David, wouldn't restore what she'd lost. But it was something. The next morning, she dressed in her last clean outfit, jeans and a sweater, clothes she'd never have worn in her old life, and went to the courthouse to turn herself in for arraignment. The crowd outside stopped her cold. Hundreds of people, maybe more. Parents with children, holding signs. Victoria Chen, save my daughter. Heroes don't belong in prison. Justice for those who seek justice. Isabella Dillon stood at the front with her father, holding a hand-drawn picture of Victoria with a cape. Marcus was there with Emma, who ran to Victoria immediately. See, Emma said, you're not alone. The media was there too, cameras capturing the crowd, the signs, the narrative shifting in real time. David emerged from the courthouse, saw the crowd, and his jaw tightened. He walked to Victoria, cameras following. This won't change anything, he said quietly. It changes everything, Victoria replied. It shows that what I did mattered to real people. Real people don't decide federal cases. No, but they vote for the people who appoint prosecutors. How's that political career you're building going to survive, prosecuting someone this crowd sees as a hero? David's expression darkened. You think public pressure will save you? I think you've already lost. Even if you convict me, even if I serve 20 years, I'll be the woman who saved a child, while you'll be the man who punished her for it. You always were too concerned with perception, and you were always too concerned with power. Judge Harrison, the elderly woman who would oversee the case, emerged from the courthouse. She looked at the crowd, at Victoria, at David. Ms. Chen, she said, voice carrying despite her age. Are you ready for arraignment? Your Honor, Victoria replied. I'm ready for whatever comes next. As they walked into the courthouse, the crowd began chanting, Justice for Victoria! Justice for heroes! Inside, in the courtroom, Victoria stood as charges were read. Conspiracy, money laundering, financing illegal military operations, each charge carrying years of potential prison time. How do you plead? Judge Harrison asked. Victoria looked back at the gallery, packed with supporters. She saw Marcus and Emma, Dylan and Isabella, strangers who'd become allies. Not guilty, Your Honor. Not guilty of doing anything except what any decent human being would do when a child's life was at stake. David stood to argue for remand, for Victoria to be held without bail. Your Honor, Ms. Chen is a flight risk with significant resources. Her resources are frozen, Victoria's public defender interrupted. A young woman, fresh out of law school, assigned because Victoria couldn't afford anyone else. She still has connections, means, I have a motel room I can barely afford and the clothes on my back, Victoria said, breaking protocol. If that makes me a flight risk, then your definition needs work. Judge Harrison's lips twitched, almost a smile. Bail is set at $50,000. Victoria's heart sank. Might as well have been $50 million. I'll post it, Marcus said from the gallery. Sir, you can't, the bailiff started. It's my shop. I'm putting up my shop as collateral. Marcus, no, Victoria turned to him. You can't risk, it's not a risk, you're not running. He looked at Judge Harrison. Your Honor, Rivera's auto repair has been in my family for 30 years. It's worth enough to cover bail. Judge Harrison considered. I'll allow it. As they processed the paperwork, Victoria pulled Marcus aside. Why? Why would you risk everything for me? Because Emma was right. We have each other. That has to mean something. I could lose. Probably will lose. You'll lose your shop. Then we'll figure something else out. Together. Victoria looked at this man who'd been a stranger a week ago, who'd become something she didn't have a name for. I don't deserve this kind of faith. Nobody deserves faith. That's why it's faith. That night, Victoria stayed at Marcus's apartment, sleeping on the couch, Emma's drawings of her as a superhero taped to the refrigerator. It was cramped, worn, everything her penthouse hadn't been. It felt more like home than anywhere she'd lived in years, but she knew it was temporary. David wouldn't stop. The federal case would proceed. The evidence was overwhelming. She'd saved a child, and doomed herself. In the darkness, planning her defense with a public defender who'd never tried a federal case, Victoria Chen faced the truth. Doing the right thing had cost her everything. And somehow, impossibly, it had also given her everything that mattered. The crisis wasn't the crime or the charges or the loss of her empire. The crisis was discovering that the life she'd fought so hard to build had been empty, while the life she'd stumbled into by accident was full. Tomorrow would bring more battles, more losses, probably defeat. But tonight, in a small apartment in Queens with a mechanic and his daughter who'd claimed her as family, Victoria Chen was something she'd never been in her penthouse. She was home. The call came at 2 a.m., 3 days after the rescue. Marcus jolted awake to his phone, buzzing insistently on the nightstand. "Mr. Rivera, this is Officer Chen from NYPD. There's been an incident involving Victoria Chen. She listed you as her emergency contact." Marcus was already pulling on clothes. "Is she hurt?" You should come to Mount Sinai Hospital." The drive through empty Manhattan streets felt endless. Marcus found Victoria in the emergency room, sitting on a bed with her right hand wrapped in bloodied gauze. Her face was bruised, her expensive clothes torn. "What happened?" Victoria looked up, and he saw something broken in her eyes. "The brother. One of the kidnapper's brothers. He found me at the motel." "Jesus, Victoria!" He wanted to know where his brother was, wanted revenge for the arrest. She lifted her bandaged hand. "I fought back. Badly, but I fought." A doctor approached. "Ms. Chen has a fractured metacarpal, multiple contusions. She's lucky. The attack could have been much worse if other motel guests hadn't heard the struggle." "Where is he now? The attacker?" "Arrested," Victoria said flatly. "Adding assault to my list of problems." The doctor excused himself, leaving them alone in the curtained area. Marcus sat beside her on the bed, careful not to jostle her injured hand. "You can't go back to that motel." "I can't afford anywhere else. My assets are still frozen." "You're staying with us." "Marcus, I can't impose." "It's not imposing. It's survival. Emma would never forgive me if something happened to you." Victoria's tough exterior cracked slightly. "Why does your 8-year-old care what happens to me?" "Because she sees what I see, someone worth protecting." They left the hospital as dawn broke over the city. Victoria moved stiffly, each step revealing new pain from the attack. Marcus drove her to the motel to collect her few belongings: 2 suitcases of clothes, a laptop the FBI hadn't seized, and a photo from her old office she'd managed to save. "That's everything?" Marcus asked, looking at the meager collection. "From 50 million to 2 suitcases, it's almost poetic." Emma was eating cereal when they arrived at the apartment, Tony from the shop watching her before school. She took one look at Victoria's bandaged hand and bruised face and immediately got up to hug her. "Who hurt you?" "A bad man, but I'm okay." "Dad, she needs ice for her face, and the good pillows, and maybe soup. Soup helps everything." Tony stood, taking in the situation. "I'll head to the shop. Marcus, take the day. Take care of this." After Tony left and Emma reluctantly went to school, Marcus helped Victoria settle on the couch. The apartment felt even smaller with her in it, her presence highlighting every worn surface, every sign of financial struggle. "I'm destroying your life too," Victoria said quietly. "First your shop is bail collateral, now this." "My life was pretty static before you came along." "Static means stable. Static means not moving. Sometimes disruption is necessary." Victoria's phone rang. Her public defender, Sandra Kim, sounded panicked. "Victoria, David Park just filed additional charges. He's claiming you orchestrated the kidnapping yourself for publicity." "What? That's insane." "He says he has evidence you had prior contact with the kidnappers. Something about phone records." Victoria's blood went cold. "The only contact was during the ransom negotiation." "He's spinning it differently. The grand jury meets tomorrow. If they indict on these new charges, you're looking at life, not 20 years. After Sandra hung up, Victoria sat in stunned silence. Marcus watched her process this new blow. "He's going to bury me," she said finally. "David knows these charges are fabricated, but he also knows I can't afford to fight them properly. We'll find a way." "There is no way." Victoria stood abruptly, then winced as the movement aggravated her injuries. Don't you understand? David holds every card. He has unlimited resources, the full weight of federal prosecution, and a personal vendetta. I have a public defender fresh out of law school and 2 suitcases of clothes. Marcus's phone rang. Jake, the private contractor from the rescue. Marcus, heard about the attack on Ms. Chen. Also heard about the new charges. Complete bullshit. Can you help? Already am. My team's been investigating. The kidnapping was real, but there's more to it. The men who took Isabella Dillon, they work for someone bigger, someone with connections. Who? Still digging. But Marcus, if we're right, this goes deeper than just a kidnapping. Ms. Chen might have stumbled into something much larger. After Jake hung up, Marcus found Victoria at the window, staring out at the street below. Jake's investigating. He thinks there's more to this. It doesn't matter. Even if there is, who's going to believe us? I'm the disgraced billionaire who played vigilante. My word means nothing now. The day passed slowly. Victoria tried to work on her defense with Sandra over video call, but the young lawyer was clearly overwhelmed. Marcus listened from the kitchen, hearing the hopelessness creeping into both their voices. That evening, Emma came home with a box of cookies. Mrs. Chen from downstairs made them. She said they're for the brave lady who saved the little girl. Victoria looked at the cookies like they were foreign objects. People don't usually give me things without expecting something in return. Mrs. Chen just likes giving cookies, Emma said simply. She says sweetness shared is sweetness doubled. They ate dinner together, pasta with sauce from a jar, garlic bread from a box. Victoria struggled with her injured hand, and Emma naturally started cutting her food for her without being asked. In my old life, I had a personal chef, Victoria said, attempting humor. He'd be horrified by pasta from a box. But does his pasta taste like home? Emma asked. I don't know what home tastes like. Like this, Emma said confidently. Like eating with people who care about you. That night, after Emma was asleep, Victoria and Marcus sat in the small living room. The news was covering her case, pundits debating whether she was hero or criminal. They're going to destroy me tomorrow, Victoria said quietly. The grand jury will indict. David will make sure of it. Then we fight the trial. With what? Hope and good intentions? Marcus turned off the TV. With the truth. The truth doesn't matter in federal court. Only what you can prove. Then we prove it. Victoria laughed bitterly. You don't understand how this works. David has teams of investigators, unlimited resources, the benefit of every doubt. I have nothing. You have people who believe in you. That's not enough. It has to be. Victoria's phone rang. Dylan Matthews. Ms. Chen, I saw the news about the attack. Are you okay? I'm fine, Dylan. Listen, I've been talking to people. Other parents, community organizers. We want to help. Unless you have a few $1,000,000 for a legal defense, there's not much. We have something better. We have numbers. There's going to be a protest tomorrow, during your grand jury hearing. Thousands of people all supporting you. Dylan, that's kind, but you saved my daughter when the system failed her. Now we're going to stand up for you when the system's failing you. After he hung up, Victoria sat quietly, processing this unexpected support. See, Marcus said, you're not alone. Public support won't change the legal outcome. Maybe not, but it might change the narrative. The next morning came too quickly. Victoria dressed in her last professional outfit, trying to look presentable despite her bruised face and bandaged hand. Sandra met them at the courthouse, looking even more overwhelmed than before. David's presenting the grand jury with evidence of prior contact between you and the kidnappers. Phone records that he's interpreting as conspiracy. Those were during the ransom negotiation. He's suggesting they were from before, that you arranged everything. That's perjury. He's falsifying evidence. Can you prove that? Victoria fell silent. Without access to her frozen assets, without a proper legal team, she couldn't prove anything. Outside the courthouse, the crowd Dylan had promised had materialized. Hundreds of people, maybe thousands, holding signs supporting Victoria. Isabella Dillon stood at the front with her father, holding a hand-drawn sign. She saved me. The media was everywhere, the narrative shifting in real time from billionaire vigilante to hero under attack. David emerged from the courthouse, saw the crowd, and his expression darkened. He walked directly to Victoria. This won't help you. he said quietly. It already has. Look around, David. These people see what you refuse to see. I see someone who thinks she's above the law. You see someone who wouldn't marry you, and you've never forgiven me for it. David's jaw tightened. This isn't personal. Everything about this is personal. You could have let the state prosecutors handle this, but you took it federal. You could have charged me with lesser crimes, but you went for the maximum. You could have been fair, but you chose vengeance. I chose justice. You chose revenge dressed up as justice. Inside the courthouse, while the grand jury met in secret session, Victoria sat with Marcus and Emma in a waiting room. Emma was drawing, her concentration absolute. "What are you making?" Victoria asked. "A picture for the judge, to show her you're good." "Judges don't look at pictures from kids, sweetheart." "Maybe they should. Kids see truth better than adults." Sandra burst in, face flushed. "They're taking a break." One of the jurors asked to see the actual phone records, not just David's interpretation. "Is that good?" "It's unusual. Grand juries usually just accept what prosecutors present." An hour passed, then 2. Finally, a court officer appeared. "The grand jury has reached a decision." They filed back into the courtroom. David stood at the prosecutor's table, confident despite the delay. Judge Harrison presided, her expression unreadable. The foreman stood. "We, the grand jury, find insufficient evidence for additional conspiracy charges. We maintain the original charges as filed." David's face went white. "Your Honor, I request the grand jury be instructed to reconsider." "Mr. Park," Judge Harrison's voice was steel, "the grand jury has spoken. Your additional charges are rejected." Victoria felt her knees weaken with relief. Not a complete victory, but not the life sentence David had tried for. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted in celebration, but Victoria knew this was just a reprieve. The original charges remained. 20 years still hung over her head. That night, in Marcus's apartment, she sat at the small kitchen table, finally allowing herself to break down. The tears came hard and fast, weeks of stress and fear pouring out. Marcus held her while she cried, Emma joining them, creating a circle of comfort in the tiny kitchen. "We won today," Marcus said quietly. "We delayed the inevitable. No, we proved David isn't invincible. That truth still matters sometimes." Victoria's phone rang. "Jake, Ms. Chen, we found something. The kidnappers? They were working for someone connected to your company, someone on your board." Victoria's blood went cold. "Who?" "Still confirming, but it looks like someone wanted you distracted, vulnerable. The kidnapping was real, but your involvement might have been orchestrated." "Oh my God, Isabella Dillon was taken to manipulate me?" "More like to create an opportunity. Someone knew you'd intervene, knew it would destroy you legally." After Jake hung up, Victoria shared the information with Marcus. "Someone on my board arranged this, used a child as bait. We need to tell Sandra. This changes everything. We can't prove it yet. And even if we could, who would believe that board members of a major corporation would arrange a kidnapping? The FBI would have to investigate. The FBI answers to David's department. He'd bury it." Victoria stood, pacing the small living room. "But if Jake's right, if we can prove it, then I'm not a vigilante who broke the law. I'm a victim of an elaborate conspiracy." And David becomes the prosecutor who almost sent an innocent woman to prison. They looked at each other, understanding dawning. The game had changed. They weren't just fighting for Victoria's freedom anymore. They were fighting to expose something much larger, much darker. "The crisis isn't my legal troubles," Victoria said slowly. "The crisis is that someone used a child's life as a chess piece to destroy me." "Then we stop playing their game," Marcus said, "and we start playing ours." Emma looked up from her drawing. "Does this mean the bad people won't win?" Victoria knelt beside her. "It means we're going to fight harder." "Good. Heroes always fight harder when things get tough." Looking at this child's absolute faith, Victoria felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Not the calculated probability of corporate success, but real, dangerous, transformative hope. The crisis wasn't over. If anything, it had just revealed itself to be larger than anyone imagined. But for the first time since her arrest, Victoria Chen believed she might actually survive it. Not because she had money or power or influence, but because she had something she'd never had before. People willing to fight beside her. The war for her freedom had just begun. Jake's evidence arrived at 3 a.m., hand-delivered by one of his team members to avoid digital surveillance. Victoria sat at Marcus's kitchen table, reading through financial records, phone transcripts, and surveillance photos, while Marcus made coffee and Emma slept. "Richard Vaughn," Victoria said, staring at a photo of her former board chairman. "He orchestrated everything." The documents showed a clear pattern. Vaughn had been shorting Meridian Capital stock for months, betting against the company he was supposed to be leading. When Victoria's success had driven the stock higher instead of lower, he'd needed a crisis to trigger a collapse. He hired the kidnappers through 3 shell companies, Marcus read from Jake's report. Knew Dylan worked at a warehouse Vaughn owned through another subsidiary. Knew about Dylan's debts, his daughter, everything. He profiled him. Victoria said quietly, "Found the perfect desperate father, created the perfect crisis, knowing exactly how I'd react." "How could he know you'd intervene?" Victoria laughed bitterly. "Because Richard studied me for years. He knew about my father, about David leaving me. He knew I couldn't watch a father lose his daughter. It was surgical in its precision." Marcus's phone rang. Sandra, Victoria's public defender, sounded exhausted but excited. "Victoria needs to see the news, now." Marcus turned on the television. Every channel was covering the same breaking story. FBI raids Meridian Capital offices. The footage showed federal agents carrying boxes of documents, computers, files. But it wasn't David Park leading the raid. It was another prosecutor, someone Victoria didn't recognize. "What's happening?" Victoria asked Sandra over the phone. "Internal Affairs got an anonymous tip about David's handling of your case. The falsified evidence, the personal vendetta. He's been removed from the prosecution. The new team is reviewing everything." Victoria felt the floor shift under her feet. Jake sent them the evidence. "Whoever sent it, it's working. My phone's been ringing all morning. The new prosecutor wants to meet." 3 hours later, Victoria sat in a federal building conference room across from Assistant U.S. Attorney Monica Rivers, a black woman in her 50s with eyes that missed nothing. "Ms. Chen, I've reviewed the case file. I've also reviewed what Internal Affairs found regarding Mr. Park's conduct." Rivers opened a folder. He falsified timeline evidence. He suppressed exculpatory statements. He had a clear personal conflict he never disclosed. He tried to destroy me. Yes, he did, and he nearly succeeded. Rivers leaned back. "I've also seen the new evidence regarding Richard Vaughn and the conspiracy to manipulate you. Then you know I was a victim, not a perpetrator. I know you were both. A victim of conspiracy, yes, but also someone who took the law into her own hands. The kidnapping was real. Isabella Dillon was truly in danger. Your intervention, while heroic, was also illegal." Victoria felt hope crumbling. "So, nothing changes?" "Everything changes. I'm offering you a deal. Plead guilty to a single charge of conspiracy to pay ransom. Time served plus 2 years probation. No prison time." Victoria stared at her. "Why?" "Because justice isn't just about punishment. It's about proportionality. You've lost your career, your fortune, your reputation. You've paid a price. And frankly," Rivers smiled slightly, "prosecuting the woman who saved Isabella Dillon would be a public relations nightmare now that the real conspiracy is exposed." "What about Vaughn?" "Mr. Vaughn was arrested this morning. He's looking at life in prison for conspiracy, kidnapping, market manipulation, and about 15 other charges." Victoria felt tears threatening. "I need to discuss this with my attorney." "You have 24 hours. This deal won't last longer than that." Outside the federal building, Victoria found Marcus waiting with Emma, who'd insisted on coming after school. "Did they say you can come home?" Emma asked immediately. "They offered a deal. No prison if I plead guilty to a lesser charge." "But you're not guilty," Emma protested. "I am, sweetheart. Not of what they originally charged, but I did break the law. Sometimes doing the right thing and doing the legal thing aren't the same." That evening, Dylan Matthews came to the apartment with Isabella. The little girl had gained weight, looked healthier, but still carried a watchfulness that broke Victoria's heart. "Ms. Chen," Dylan said, "we heard about Vaughn, that he arranged everything. I'm so sorry. My desperation made me a weapon against you." "You were a victim too, Dylan. We both were." Isabella tugged on Victoria's sleeve. Are you going to jail? No, sweetheart. I'm going to stay right here. Good, because I made you something. She pulled out a drawing, Victoria, as a superhero, standing between a little girl and a monster. That's you protecting me from the bad men. Victoria hugged the girl, feeling the weight of what this child had endured because of corporate greed. After the Matthews family left, Victoria called the one person she'd been avoiding, her mother. Victoria? Her mother's voice was cautious. They'd been estranged for years, Victoria's success creating distance that felt impossible to bridge. Mom, I need to tell you something. She explained everything, the kidnapping, the conspiracy, the deal offered. Her mother listened in silence. Come home, her mother said finally. After you sign the deal, come home. Mom, I can't. You can. You've been running from who you were for so long, you forgot that's where you started. Come home and remember. That night, Victoria couldn't sleep. She stood at the window watching the city lights, Marcus joining her. You're going to take the deal? It's the best option. Sandra agrees. But pleading guilty means accepting I was wrong, and part of me still believes saving Isabella was right, no matter what the law says. It was right. Legal and right aren't synonyms. Victoria turned to him. After this is over, after I sign the deal, I have nothing. No money, no career, no future in finance. You have Emma and me. You have Dylan and Isabella. You have thousands of people who see you as a hero. That's not a life. It's the only life that matters. Marcus kissed her then, soft and unexpected. Victoria froze, then melted into it, allowing herself this moment of connection after weeks of isolation. I'm broken, she whispered against his lips. So am I. Maybe broken people fit together better. The next morning brought chaos. David Park had been arrested, charged with prosecutorial misconduct, evidence tampering, and conspiracy to violate civil rights. The footage of him being led away in handcuffs ran on every news channel. Victoria felt no satisfaction seeing it. David had been broken by ambition, just as she'd been broken by betrayal. They'd destroyed each other in their pursuit of power. At the federal courthouse, Victoria stood before Judge Harrison one final time. Ms. Chen, you're prepared to enter your plea? I am, Your Honor. To the charge of conspiracy to provide material support to a kidnapping, how do you plead? Victoria looked back at the gallery. Marcus and Emma sat in the front row, Dylan and Isabella behind them. Hundreds of supporters filled the remaining seats. Guilty, Your Honor. Judge Harrison nodded. The court accepts your plea. Given the extraordinary circumstances of this case, including the manipulation you suffered and the life you saved, I'm accepting the prosecutor's recommendation. You're sentenced to time served plus 2 years probation. The gavel fell. It was over. Outside the courthouse, the crowd erupted in celebration. Victoria was surrounded by people wanting to thank her, to touch her, to tell her she was a hero. But she only had eyes for Emma, who ran to her and jumped into her arms. You're free! You're really free! I'm free, Victoria agreed, holding the girl tight. A reporter pushed forward. Ms. Chen, what's next for you? Victoria considered the question. I honestly don't know. Will you return to finance? I'm barred from serving as an officer of any public company. So no, that life is over. Any regrets? Victoria looked at Marcus, at Emma, at Isabella Dillon standing with her father. No regrets. For the first time in my life, no regrets. That evening, they celebrated at Marcus's apartment. Not a fancy party, just Chinese takeout and store-bought cake. Dylan and Isabella came, as did Tony from the shop, Sandra the public defender, even Jake stopped by. So, what are you going to do now? Jake asked Victoria. I have no idea. I'm 35, unemployable in my field, with a criminal record and no money. But you're alive, Isabella said quietly. And I'm alive because of you. That's worth something. Emma had an idea. You could work at Dad's shop. Everyone laughed, but Marcus looked thoughtful. Actually, that's not crazy. I need someone to handle the books, deal with suppliers, manage the business side. You want to hire a convicted felon to run your books? I want to hire someone I trust. The conviction is just paperwork. Victoria felt something crack open in her chest. You'd really do that? We're family now, Emma said simply. Family helps family. Later, after everyone had gone, Victoria stood in the kitchen washing dishes, a task she'd never done in her penthouse life. Marcus dried, working beside her in comfortable rhythm. "This isn't the life you planned," he said. "No, it's completely different." She handed him a plate. "It's better. Better than being worth 50 million. Money insulated me from feeling anything real. Pain, yes, but also joy. Connection, love." She turned to face him. "I spent 3 years in a penthouse prison of my own making. Richard Vaughn just gave me the push I needed to escape." That's a generous interpretation of conspiracy and kidnapping. I'm not forgiving him, but I'm grateful for where it led. Emma appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleepy eyes. "Are you staying?" The question was directed at Victoria, and it carried more weight than its simple words suggested. "If you'll have me," Victoria answered. "Forever?" Victoria looked at Marcus, who nodded slightly. "Forever." Emma smiled and padded back to bed, satisfied with the universe's arrangement. 6 months later, Victoria stood in the office of Rivera's Auto Repair, now expanded to include the space next door. The books were balanced, suppliers paid on time, and they'd just hired 2 more mechanics from the neighborhood. She wore jeans and a shop t-shirt with Rivera's embroidered on it. Her hands had calluses now from learning basic repairs. She could change oil, rotate tires, and diagnose simple engine problems. "You've got a visitor," Tony called out. Monica Rivers, the prosecutor who'd offered her the deal, stood in the garage. "Ms. Rivers?" "Ms. Chen, or should I say, Ms. Rivera." She gestured to the wedding ring on Victoria's finger. "We married last month. Small ceremony." "Congratulations. I came to tell you that Richard Vaughn was convicted on all counts. Life without parole." Victoria felt nothing. No satisfaction, no closure. Vaughn was just another corporate predator who'd finally faced consequences. "There's something else?" Rivers continued. "The FBI found more victims. Other executives Vaughn had destroyed through manufactured crises. There's a settlement fund being established." "I don't want his money." "It's not his. It's restitution from the company's insurance. You're entitled to approximately $3 million. Victoria looked around the shop. At Marcus teaching a teenager from the neighborhood how to check brake fluid. At Emma doing homework in the corner. At the life they'd built from scratch. "Give it to Dylan Matthews," she said, "for Isabella's therapy and education." Rivers smiled. "I had a feeling you'd say that. Dylan asked me to give you this if you refused the money." She handed Victoria an envelope. Inside was a photo of Isabella at her new school, smiling genuinely for the first time since the kidnapping. On the back she'd written, "Thank you for saving me twice, once from the bad men, once from being afraid forever." After Rivers left, Victoria returned to the books, to the simple satisfaction of numbers that balanced, of work that mattered, of a life that made sense. Marcus found her there an hour later. "Any regrets?" he asked, echoing the reporter's question from months ago. Victoria pulled him close, kissed him with the confidence of someone who'd found home. "Only one." "What?" "That it took losing everything to find what actually mattered." Outside, Emma was teaching Isabella Dillon to ride a bike in the shop's parking lot, their laughter bright in the afternoon sun. 2 girls who'd survived trauma, choosing joy anyway. Victoria watched them through the window, understanding finally that the greatest hostile takeover of her life hadn't been corporate raids or federal prosecution. It had been love conquering fear, community defeating isolation, and the discovery that the only wealth worth having was the kind that couldn't be counted in dollars. The crisis had passed, the storm had broken, and in its wake, Victoria Chen Rivera had built something indestructible from the ruins of everything she'd lost. A family, a purpose, a life worth living. The woman who'd once commanded boardrooms now commanded a small auto shop's office. The hands that had signed billion-dollar deals now bore calluses from honest work. The heart that had been frozen in crystal armor now beat warm and open. She was no longer rich by any measure that mattered to her old world. She was, finally, wealthy in the only currency that counted. 5 years had passed since the day Victoria Chen walked into Café Meridian wearing designer armor and left in handcuffs. The November morning was crisp as Victoria Rivera stood outside the community center that had once been an abandoned warehouse in Queens. The sign read, "The Isabella Center," named for the girl whose kidnapping had changed everything. Inside, 30 kids from the neighborhood were learning basic coding from volunteer teachers. "Mrs. Rivera, the news people are here," called James, her former assistant who'd shocked everyone by leaving corporate life to help run the center. Victoria smoothed her jeans and Rivera's auto shop polo shirt, still amused by how far she'd fallen from Tom Ford's suits, or risen, depending on perspective. The reporter was young, eager, working on a piece about where are they now for the 5th anniversary of the kidnapping. "Ms. Chen, sorry, Mrs. Rivera, you went from running a billion-dollar fund to managing an auto shop. Any regrets?" Victoria looked through the window at Marcus teaching a group of teenagers to change oil, Emma among them, now 13, and determined to be the best mechanic in the family. "I went from moving imaginary money to teaching real skills to kids who need them. The only thing I regret is that it took a crisis to show me what mattered. Richard Vaughn died in prison last year. Did that bring closure? Richard was a symptom, not the disease. There are hundreds of Richard Vaughns, destroying lives for profit margins. His death changed nothing. But you've changed things. This center has helped over 300 families. Small victories in a big war." The reporter left after an hour, but Victoria lingered in the center. Isabella Dillon, now 12, was tutoring younger kids in math. She'd grown into a quiet, thoughtful girl who wore her trauma like armor, but was slowly learning to lower her shields. "Ms. Victoria," Isabella said, approaching, "my dad wanted me to give you this. It was an invitation. Dylan was getting married, had found love with a woman who understood his past, and chose to build a future anyway." "You'll come?" Isabella asked. "Wouldn't miss it." That evening, the Rivera family had dinner together in their small apartment above the shop. They'd had opportunities to move, the shop's success, and the center's grants making a bigger place possible. But this was home, where their real life had begun. "Dad, tell the story," Emma said, a ritual she still requested sometimes. "Which story?" "The one about Mom saving everyone." Marcus smiled at Victoria. "Your mom was wearing shoes that cost more than our rent." "And she was mean," Emma interrupted, knowing every beat. "She was scared," Victoria corrected gently. "Fear makes people mean sometimes." "But then the bad men came," Emma continued, "and Dad protected you, and you protected the little girl, and everything changed." "Everything changed," Victoria agreed. After Emma went to bed, Victoria and Marcus sat on their fire escape, looking at the city lights, the same view she'd once had from her penthouse, just from a different angle. "David got out last month," Marcus said quietly. Victoria nodded. She'd heard. 3 years in minimum security for prosecutorial misconduct. He'd lost everything too. Career, reputation, freedom. "He sent a letter?" Victoria tensed. "What did it say?" "That he's sorry. That ambition poisoned him. That seeing you choose humanity over success showed him what he'd become." "Do you believe him? Does it matter? His apology doesn't undo anything." They sat in comfortable silence. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, kids who needed help, bills to pay, the constant struggle of keeping the center funded. But tonight, they had this. Each other, Emma safe inside, the life they'd built from ruins. "I saw Monica Rivers today," Victoria said. "The prosecutor who gave me the deal. She's retiring, wants to volunteer at the center." The system's servant switching sides? Maybe realizing there shouldn't be sides, just people trying to help other people. Marcus pulled her closer. "You've gone soft, Victoria Rivera." "I've gone human. There's a difference." Inside, Emma's light was still on, probably reading under her covers. Below, the shop was locked up tight, ready for tomorrow's work. The center would open at 7, serving breakfast to kids who might not eat otherwise. This was their kingdom now. Not corporate towers, but community foundations. Not hostile takeovers, but hands extended in help. "Do you ever think about it?" Marcus asked. "Who you'd be if none of this had happened?" Victoria considered. "I'd still be in my penthouse, still be worth millions, still be completely empty." She turned to him. "I'd never have known you were Emma. Never have discovered I could be more than sharp edges and strategic victories." So you're grateful to Richard Vaughan? No, but I'm grateful I survived him. Grateful I found you in the wreckage. A siren wailed in the distance, the city's reminder that crisis was always happening somewhere. But here, in their small corner of Queens, they had built something stronger than crisis. Mom? Emma's voice from inside. Can Isabella sleep over tomorrow? Her dad's got a date. Victoria smiled. Of course. And can we work on the Mustang this weekend? I figured out what's wrong with the transmission. We'll work on it together. Emma appeared in the window. Are you two going to stay out there forever? It's cold. They climbed back inside, locking the window against the November chill. Emma hugged them both, then headed to bed, leaving her parents in the kitchen. She's growing up too fast, Victoria said. She's growing up right. That's what matters. Victoria's phone buzzed. Jake, the contractor who'd helped save Isabella, now head of security for the center. Just wanted you to know, his text read, the Times is running a profile tomorrow. The hostile takeover that saved a soul. You're going to hate it. Victoria showed Marcus, who laughed. Still uncomfortable with being seen as a hero? Heroes don't exist, just people who choose right over easy in important moments. That's literally the definition of a hero, Victoria. She kissed him, tasting coffee and contentment. Then everyone's a hero sometimes, and everyone's a villain sometimes. The trick is making sure your heroic moments count more. Later, unable to sleep, Victoria walked through the apartment, stopping at the wall of photos they'd accumulated. Their small wedding at City Hall, Emma's school plays, Isabella Dillon's recovery milestones, the center's opening, Marcus teaching his first apprentice, Victoria's first successfully rebuilt engine, not the life she'd planned, not the life anyone would have predicted for Victoria Chen, corporate warrior, but the life she'd earned through loss, through choice, through the hardest hostile takeover of all, the conquest of her own fear. Tomorrow would bring new battles, kids who needed saving, systems that needed fighting, the constant struggle to build something good in a world designed for exploitation. But tonight, Victoria Rivera stood in her small apartment, surrounded by sleeping family, sustained by chosen community, rich in ways her old self couldn't have imagined. She thought about 21-year-old Victoria, hungry for success, building walls against vulnerability. She thought about 30-year-old Victoria, standing at an altar, watching her future walk away. She thought about 35-year-old Victoria, holding Isabella Dillon in a warehouse, choosing someone else's life over her own freedom. Each version had been necessary. Each breakage had created space for something better to grow. You okay? Marcus asked, finding her in the darkness. Just thinking? About how the worst thing that ever happened to me became the best thing. The kidnapping? No, earlier, David leaving me. If he'd stayed, I'd have built my walls higher, become even more ruthless. His betrayal broke me just enough to let light in. And when Isabella needed saving, that crack was wide enough to let humanity through. Marcus held her in the darkness, understanding without words. We should frame the indictment, Victoria said suddenly. What? The federal indictment. Frame it. Hang it in the center. Reminder that sometimes destruction is just preparation for construction. You really have gone soft. No, I've gone hard in different ways. Hard enough to stay gentle, strong enough to stay vulnerable, successful enough to redefine success. A car backfired outside, sounding like gunshots. Once, that would have sent Victoria diving for cover, trauma response from the café. Now she barely flinched. Time hadn't healed the wounds, but it had taught her to carry them. Come to bed, Marcus said. Tomorrow's going to be long. Every tomorrow is long when you're rebuilding the world one kid at a time. That's why we take it one kid at a time. As they walked back to their room, Victoria paused at Emma's door, listening to her daughter's peaceful breathing. This child who'd claimed her before she knew she needed claiming, who'd seen a princess in a broken woman and loved her into wholeness. The story could end here. Victoria Chen Rivera, former billionaire, current community organizer, forever changed by a violent Tuesday that became her salvation. But stories don't really end. They just pause between chapters. And tomorrow, Victoria would wake up, make breakfast for her family, walk downstairs to the shop, teach kids that broken things could be fixed, and continue the only hostile takeover that ever mattered, the daily choice to build instead of destroy, to love instead of fear, to open instead of close. The woman who'd once measured worth in dollars now measured it in damaged kids made whole. The woman who'd once commanded boardrooms now commanded respect through service. The woman who'd once stood alone in a penthouse now stood surrounded by chosen family in a small apartment that contained the entire universe. Victoria Chen had lost everything. Victoria Rivera had gained the world.